Boy, Minnesota received a terrible indictment over the weekend in the Wall Street Journal, in the Saturday Wall Street Journal, which is my favorite paper of the week. A guy named Lance Morrow wrote a piece. Does that name ring a bell?
Yes, Morrow does.
You guys are too young to remember. Maybe Kenny remembers. Do you remember the Time magazine cover photo in August of 1973 with a smiling Wendy Anderson holding up a
fish.
Northern?
Yes.
I've seen it. I have seen it.
And the caption was Minnesota, the state that works.
Yes.
Well, it's written by Lance Morrow. And Lance Morrow has now written a piece that appeared in the Saturday Wall Street Journal called How Minnesota Went from Tom Sawyer to Huck Finn.
Ooh.
50 years ago, it was the state that works. Now it's become a microcosm of an America in crisis. The same author, Lance Morrow.
Okay.
I wrote an August 1973 cover story for Time magazine that praised Minnesota as the state that works. The cover photograph showed Governor Wendell Anderson dressed in a plaid flannel shirt, grinning and holding up a northern pike that he had just caught in one of Minnesota's 12,000 lakes. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The story began with this archaic rhapsody. It is a state where a residual American secret still seems to operate. Some of the nation's more agreeable qualities are evident there. Courtesy and fairness, honesty, a capacity for innovation, hard work, intellectual adventure, and responsibility. Minnesotans are remarkably civil. Their crime rate is the third lowest in the nation after Iowa and Maine. Almost 50 years later, I received an email from an old friend who lives in Minneapolis. He began another report from the hinterland. The people of Minneapolis now share online updates of carjackings and other crimes. It would be difficult to exaggerate the extent of violent crime throughout the city. Everyone now knows someone who's a victim. This will be a huge issue in this year's elections. More than 650 people were shot in the city last year. 95 died. There were more than 2,000 robberies. According to the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, carjackings in the city rose 537% from November 2019 to November 2020, and then rose another 40% in the 10 months after that. What happened? Minnesota once enjoyed a high degree of social cohesion rooted in the traditions of previous waves of immigrants. But as the region has grown and become more diverse, the Twin Cities in particular develop most of the problems that bedevil much of the rest of urban America. He might as well have said, the closer you get to the country's tallest buildings. Mm-hmm. Crime, unemployment, drugs, and so on. The reasons for this are complicated and widely debated. In any case, Minnesota now ranks among the worst states in the country when it comes to racial inequality. In 1973, there were two strong political parties in Minnesota, both centrist and in touch with the state's voters. A profound change occurred in the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, especially among the wealthy and young. They contrived to seize political power by leveraging certain idealistic or merely sentimental impulses in the public mind. It was the prospering woke who affected the progressive Minneapolis City Council that elected the progressive Minneapolis City Council that supports defunding the police, and it was those white elites who, more than her fellow Somali Americans, elected Ilhan Omar to the House. A mostly white meritocracy caring more about, say, transgender rights than job creation took command in Minneapolis and elsewhere in the country. Both parties have become much more ideological, controlled by angry amateurs, the woke and the anti-woke. The woke had this unhappy fact to support them. The Minneapolis Police Department harbored an unusual number of racists and bullies. There were fatal and well-publicized encounters between police and black men that stirred rage and protest. The great crisis came amid the pandemic. George Floyd died in a gutter outside Cup Foods under Derek Chauvin's knee. There was endless video of that and all that followed. The smartphone verifies the Heisenberg principle of observation, which states roughly that the observing of an event alters the event itself. The summer of 2020 followed. Black Lives Matter emerged. The progressive mayor of Minneapolis abandoned a police precinct and allowed the mob to loot and burn it. George Floyd was declared a saint. Mr. Chauvin, damned as the devil who murdered the saint, was cast into prison. Minneapolis cops left the force in droves, and the ones who remained stood down. reluctant to risk any new incident. A similar pattern imposed itself elsewhere until prosecutors in Democrat-ruled cities across the country, Los Angeles, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, began to refuse to prosecute minority criminals, almost no matter the crime. See no evil, prosecute no evil. An age of magical thinking persuades itself to embrace many inversions of the truth, one of them being the idea that the criminal is the victim.
Oof.
The left, now dominant, will pay the price. Fantasies of retaliation will play vividly in voters' minds when they go to vote in November, just how vividly the Democratic Party and President Biden will discover. The difference between my 1973 story and the news reports of 2022 amounts to the difference, as it were, between Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. Tom gives you the boyish, innocent, sunshot rendering of Hannibal, Missouri in the middle of the 19th century. Huck's story is a version of America that includes poverty, murder, alcoholism, child abuse, race prejudice, blood feud, and imbecility. Minneapolis today looks a little bit more like the Huck Finn version, although without Huck's humor or his rascal charm.
Ooh,
Very nice.
boy. That is grim.
Spot on, I think, as well, even though it's bad news. Wow. 1973 to 2022.
Early on in the piece, you read, he said that we rank high in racial inequality.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true?
Apparently, sure.
Because he says so?
Well, no, I don't know what stats he's citing.
Yeah, I'd love to see that
Yeah.
stat. That caught me by surprise.
Like many cities, the closer you get to the tallest building, St. Paul, for example, has a black mayor. We have many blacks on the city council.
I mean, racial inequality, yeah, I would agree. I didn't know we ranked at the top.
Well, how long ago was 1973?
49,
30 years
39
ago. No, 50
No, no.
years ago.
Yeah, it's 50 years ago.
Well, that's 49 years ago.
Yeah, 49. 50.
Okay, 50 years ago, which, to me, I'm older than you guys, that's a blink of an eye. We've really, really gone downhill.